Shutdown doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't arrive with a warning sign or a dramatic collapse. It happens quietly, gradually, through moments where you decide not to feel something because feeling it feels inconvenient, unsafe, or overwhelming. And if you're listening to this right now, there's a chance you've been told you're calm, mature, composed, emotionally strong. And on the surface, that might even feel true. But deep down, there's a numbness you don't talk about, a flatness, a sense that your emotional volume has been turned down so low that even joy sounds distant. And you don't remember when it started, only that somewhere along the way, feeling deeply began to feel like a liability instead of a gift. Most people don't shut down because they want to. They shut down because at some point it felt necessary. Maybe you were overwhelmed. Maybe you were hurt and didn't have the space to process it. Maybe you learned early that expressing emotion led to conflict, rejection, or being misunderstood. So you adapted. You became controlled. You became rational. You became the person who handles things. And that adaptation worked. It helped you survive. It helped you function. It helped you stay composed when things were chaotic. And for a long time, it felt like strength. But survival strategies aren't meant to become permanent lifestyles. And when they do, they slowly disconnect you from yourself. Shutting down doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like nothing, like emotional neutrality, like being unaffected. And in a world that rewards productivity and composure, that neutrality is often praised. People call you grounded, unbothered, resilient. But what they don't see is the effort it takes to maintain that state. The constant internal monitoring, the reflex to push feelings aside before they fully form. The habit of intellectualizing instead of experiencing. And that effort is exhausting because suppression takes energy. It costs you something every time you choose not to feel. Over time, the mind learns that emotions are something to manage rather than something to listen to. And once that belief settles in, you stop trusting your inner signals. You stop asking what you need. You stop noticing what excites you or drains you. And life becomes functional but flat. You do what's required. You meet expectations. You check boxes, but you don't feel deeply connected to any of it. And that's when people start saying things like, I don't know what I want anymore. I don't feel motivated. I don't feel passionate about anything. And they assume something is wrong with them. But what's really happening is that the emotional system has gone offline to protect you from overload. Shutdown is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of too much emotion that was never safely processed. It's what happens when your nervous system decides that feeling is dangerous or pointless. So it switches to efficiency mode, and efficiency mode is great for getting through hard seasons, but terrible for living a meaningful life. Because meaning is felt, not calculated. And when you're shut down, even good things don't land the way they should. Compliments feel hollow. Achievements feel anticlimactic. Relationships feel distant even when they're stable. And you start wondering why happiness feels muted. Why excitement fades quickly. Why nothing seems to fully satisfy you. The most confusing part is that from the outside, everything might look fine. You might be doing well by conventional standards. You might not be struggling in obvious ways. And that makes it harder to acknowledge the problem because there's no crisis to point to. No dramatic breakdown to justify your discomfort. Just a quiet sense that you're not fully here, that you're moving through life slightly detached, like you're watching yourself from a distance. And because there's no clear reason to feel this way, you start invalidating your own experience. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel disconnected, that you're being dramatic, that others have it worse, and that self-invalidation deepens the shutdown. Many people confuse emotional shutdown with peace because both are quiet, both lack turbulence, but peace feels alive, it feels grounded, it feels present, while shutdown feels dull, heavy, distant, and the difference is subtle but profound. Peace allows emotion to flow without overwhelming you. Shutdown blocks emotion to prevent overwhelm. And when you live in shutdown long enough, you forget what flow feels like. You forget that emotions can move through you without destroying you. You forget that discomfort is temporary, and so you keep everything contained, controlled, muted, and slowly that containment becomes isolation. not just from others, but from yourself. Shutdown often shows up in the smallest moments, in the way you avoid conversations that might stir something, in the way you distract yourself when you're alone, in the way silence feels uncomfortable, because without noise your inner world might speak, in the way you default to logic when something emotional arises, in the way you minimize your own reactions, saying, "It's not a big deal," even when it is. And none of these behaviors feel extreme. They feel reasonable, responsible, adult, but together they form a pattern of emotional avoidance that keeps you stuck in a narrow range of experience. The cost of shutdown isn't immediate pain. It's delayed fulfillment. It's the slow erosion of aliveness. It's waking up years later, realizing you've been existing more than living. And that realization can be frightening because it raises questions you've been avoiding. Questions like, who am I really? What do I want? What have I been protecting myself from? And why? And those questions feel threatening because answering them requires reopening doors you closed for a reason. Doors that once led to overwhelm, disappointment, or hurt. But growth doesn't require you to relive everything. It requires you to feel again, slowly, safely, intentionally. Coming out of shutdown isn't about forcing emotion. It's about creating safety, because your system shut down to protect you, and it won't open up until it feels safe to do so. Safe enough to feel without being flooded. Safe enough to express without being punished. Safe enough to experience discomfort without spiraling. And that safety starts internally, with the way you talk to yourself, with whether you allow your feelings to exist without judgment, with whether you give yourself permission to be human rather than composed all the time. One of the hardest parts of reopening emotionally is accepting that feeling again will include discomfort, sadness, anger, grief, not just joy. And that prospect can be intimidating if you've built your identity around being unbothered. But emotions don't disappear because you ignore them. They wait, they settle into the body, into tension, fatigue, numbness. And when you allow them to move, they don't overwhelm forever. They pass. But they need space, and space requires slowing down. And slowing down is difficult in a world that constantly distracts you from yourself. If you're shut down, you might feel disconnected from motivation. Not because you're lazy, but because motivation is fueled by emotion, by desire, by caring. And when caring feels risky, motivation disappears. And then you judge yourself for not being driven, which adds another layer of pressure. Another reason to shut down further, and the cycle continues. But the way out isn't pushing harder. It's softening, it's listening, it's rebuilding trust with your inner world. This doesn't mean you need to fall apart. It means you need to feel enough to guide your choices. Because emotions are not obstacles to logic. They are data. They tell you when something matters, when something is wrong, when something aligns. And when you ignore that data, you make decisions that look good on paper, but feel empty in practice. And over time, that emptiness becomes your baseline. And you forget that life can feel richer than this. If you recognize yourself in this, if something in you feels seen rather than accused, that's a sign that your system is ready for more awareness. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gently. And gentleness is key here, because forcing yourself to feel will only reinforce the shutdown. While curiosity invites openness, asking small questions like, what am I actually feeling right now? Where do I feel tension in my body? What do I need in this moment? Without demanding answers, without rushing the process. Reconnection doesn't come from a single breakthrough. It comes from consistent permission. Permission to pause, permission to feel without fixing, permission to be imperfectly human. And over time, those small permissions add up. They rebuild your emotional range. They bring color back into your experience. And with that color comes clarity, motivation, and a sense of being. As we come to the end of this message, I want to speak directly to the part of you that learned to shut down to survive. That part deserves respect, not criticism. It protected you when you needed it to, but you're not in the same place anymore. You don't need the same armor. You're allowed to evolve, to feel, to reconnect. And that process doesn't mean losing control. It means gaining alignment. If this resonated, if it put words to something you've been carrying quietly, I invite you to stay with Daily Upgrade Motivation. because this channel exists for people who want more than surface level calm, who want depth, honesty, and growth that starts from the inside. And if you're ready to gently upgrade your life, not by shutting yourself down further, but by opening yourself up intentionally, then you're exactly where you need to be. And you don't have to do it alone.